Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Chelsea Smith, your Learning and Development Specialist here at Action Benefits. And today we're going to learn about how to farm some marketing content ideas so you can get your social media platforms and your agency website functioning to its full potential. So by the end of this session today, you should be able to define what kind of content you want to make, how to spelunk, I always think that word's funny, how to peruse the forums online to find some questions that you can answer, how to use those questions to then pose yourself as that subject matter expert in front of your audience, how to use those questions that you found to create some content for your agency to post on your social media platforms and your website, and then how to monitor those forums and your content for success to see what worked and see what didn't. So that's kind of what the outline of what we're going to talk about today. Why answer internet questions is the first kind of overarching thing I want to talk about. Before we get into how we answer these questions, I want to talk about the why. And the shortest answer that I can give to you here is actually only 3 letters, A-E-O. But I'd like to take some time, if you would, allow me to explain what that actually means. So I honestly think this stuff is super interesting, but I will try to keep the explanation as short as I can because not everyone thinks it's super interesting. But Google is constantly working on their algorithms to get its users exactly what they want every single time they search something, right? Because that's what Google is designed to do, to get us the answers or the knowledge that we are looking for when we search for something. So they've done tons and tons of research to determine what people are when people search on the internet, what they actually are trying to get. So they've boiled down the reasons why someone might be Googling something into these 4 categories: informational, navigational, commercial, and transactional. We as health insurance agents are technically in the commercial space, right? Because we are trying to sell something to our clients. But if someone is buying health insurance or learning about Medicare for the very first time, they're probably going to Google some stuff, and they aren't going to Google it exactly the way that Google might predict that they would, as someone who is looking to buy something, right? If you're looking to buy something, you're probably maybe looking at like cars for sale or something like that. And as an agent, you probably already know this, right? Like people don't always word what they're looking for exactly in the terms that might make the most sense to someone who's in the agency or someone who is working, Google searches, because they don't completely understand what they're looking for, right? They're not going to type in, "Dear Google, I'm interested in purchasing a health insurance plan on the Affordable Care Act marketplace, and I'd like to have a Blue Cross Essential." They're not doing that, right? If they're anything like some of the people in my life, they're just going to type in the word insurance, right, into Google and hit search and then wonder why they're not getting the result they want, right? Or they might shout, "Hey, Alexa, how do I know if I qualify for subsidies?" If they have one of those things. So when you're trying to market to these potential prospects who are doing these things, it's probably unclear that your business account actually applies in these situations, right? It's not totally clear that they're looking to buy something when they're asking about subsidies, right? Because the word buy isn't in there, and the word subsidies might not always be associated with health insurance. If you aren't in the market or aren't in the insurance world, you don't necessarily know how those things are connected, right? So you are trying to help Google see that you are not only a business that sells something, that you're not just a commercial, falling into that commercial category that Google is looking for, but it's also helping you coach Google into knowing that you are an entity that helps people through a process, that you are just as much as a health insurance agent fitting into that informational bucket as you are that commercial bucket, right? Because you're not just selling someone food, right? It's not a one and done kind of transaction. Usually you're usually educating your clients as well about something before you actually set them up for that sale, right? So you're solving 2 problems to Google. you as the agent and in the agency needs to help Google understand that, right? And this is what we're doing when we're creating these this social content, and what we're doing when we are going through and answering some of these questions that people have on the internet. And that brings me to what AEO stands for. Okay, so AEO is Answer Engine Optimization. That's what that stands for. You've probably heard of search engine optimization before. That is an even broader level of what we're talking about. That's how search engines determine which words are most important when someone searches for something, and what to show them when they Google that thing, what words to show them and what pages to show them based on the words they type in. We're going to care about that to some extent here today, right? But in our circumstances, it gives us more bang for our buck if we tackle it gives us more bang for our buck if we tackle answer engine optimization, right? Because you are naturally going to use the search engine optimization terms when you're answering those questions, right? You're naturally going to use the word Medicare when you're talking about Medicare. You're going to use the words associated with those subsidies if you're talking about those subsidies. So there's not really as much of a, to me, the search engine optimization portion of what we're trying to accomplish here gets solved in and of itself if we focus on the answer portion. So again, when you're trying to target in this situation, the customers who are typing in things like, do I need to have part A to have part B, right? Again, Google doesn't completely know that you're trying to sell a Medicare Advantage product or sell Medicare to someone if they type those things in. But if you're putting the words Medicare Part B and Part A into your website, Google picks up on those words being in there and will show your content to that person when they search. So it takes a little bit of legwork at the beginning, but once you get the swing of it, it's really not that hard. And the more you do it, the more Google will recognize that you are solving that problem and answering that question for your client and getting yourself in front of them where you can make a sale. So when you go to answer a question for a client, you're really, especially if you're doing it online, right? As a social media, if you're tackling it in a social media realm, you're actually doing three things for your client. You're answering the question, right? Lowest hanging fruit, just you're giving them a solution to a problem. You're helping identify the underlying problem that was prompted by their question and then providing a solution to that problem, right? We want to reverse engineer the content so that the solution is one of our products, right? So I keep going back to the subsidies example, but for example, again, if someone is Googling, how do I know if I qualify for subsidies? Not only would you in that article help them understand how to find that out, you would then say, okay, now that you know that you qualify for these subsidies, let's hop onto the marketplace really quick. Let's see what plans you're qualified for. Let's get you into that silver so that you can make sure you're using those subsidies, or get you into a bronze if those subsidies still really don't make sense for what you need and you really want that low premium even with the subsidies, right? Those are the kind of things you're trying to do, is then eventually set that answer up to lead them to a product that you can sell to them, right? And then our low key, our I don't want to say least important, because it's not that it's not important, but you're not doing this solely for this purpose, is to show the inquirer of the question and Google that you can provide them a solution to the problem, right? The person searching the internet now turns into a prospective customer. Google sees you as a problem solver. So they bring even more people who are technically not shopping for something in Google's eyes to your website, where you are more potentially likely to get them to buy a product for you, buy an insurance product. Cool. So now that we know what our purpose is behind asking and answering these questions, let's go find some questions. So one website that I tend to gravitate towards is Quora. So if you've ever used Google before and you've typed in a question in comparison to just a word, like if you said if you typed in spaghetti, right, for instance, you're going to get pictures of spaghetti. You're going to get ads for noodles, right? Stuff like that. But if you type in how to make spaghetti, you're more likely to get a search or a website like Quora, right? So you might have seen it before if you've typed in something like this to Google. So Quora is a social question and answer website online in an online knowledge market. Users collaborate by editing questions and commenting on the answers that have been submitted by other users. So that's they stole that off their website, but that's their description of their website. And it looks like, as you can see on your screen on the right-hand side. So that is what the website kind of looks like. Quora comes up a lot when you ask full questions of Google. Like I said before, Quora has between 300 and 400 million visitors per month, with most of those visitors being adults and a third of those visitors being Americans. Half of them are high income, over half have a college degree, and they spend 2 times more time on Quora than they do on LinkedIn. So if you're someone who is spending their time advertising on LinkedIn, you might be missing the mark a little bit, because people who spend time on these sites tend to spend more time on these sites in comparison to LinkedIn, right? So keep that in mind. This is one place that if you were to go to this website, type in Medicare, you would see a question that like this that might pop up, right? And then if you visit it, you'll see there's a whole list of questions that come up. I just took one just as an example. So the next one we have here is Reddit. You probably have heard of Reddit as well. Reddit is huge and is known as an American social news aggregation, content rating, and forum social network. Registered users submit content to sites such as links, text posts, images, and videos, which are then upvoted or downvoted by other members. There's a picture of it right there on the screen. I stole that description from their website, but it is very similar to Quora in that but it is organized into content areas that are more specific to like different areas of interest. So like you might find, and there's hundreds of, probably thousands of, they're called subreddits, where they are more narrowed down categories of things that people might want to talk about. So for instance, there might be one for back when Game of Thrones was popular. I used to visit that one all the time to talk about the new Game of Thrones episodes. There's some for like tutorials on how to fix things. There's ones just for jokes. Like it goes on and on and on and on. This is on the screen as the example. I have the Medicare subreddit. So you'll see that people post questions or comments about Medicare to the Medicare subreddit, and then other users can answer the questions, as you can see in the little comment box here, or you can up or down vote the question. So if the question is not relevant, or if the question doesn't make sense, then a user could choose to downvote that question. Or if the question is something that's very important, or a question that is asked often, it could be upvoted, and then it gets brought higher up and displayed more quickly on the page, kind of similar to the way Google works, right? So people post, I went on there all week, I was making these slides. There's posts every few hours on this website of questions that people have about Medicare. This and Quora often come up on the front page of Google when you type something, again, as a question, not just typing in the word Medicare. That's, you're probably going to get like Medicare.gov if you do that in Medicare Interactive, so on and so forth. If you type in something like, so like, what is Medicare? Like, how do I get Medicare? You might get something like Reddit or Quora. Again, depending on very carefully on how you word the question. According to Social Champ, Reddit users are about 44% of them are 18 to 29. Then another third are about 30 to 49. And about half of almost half of them are American, and half of them are college educated. So just to take a look at your demographics. So that's 2 places that you could search for to get questions to talk about in your social media posts. If you want to write the questions more yourself and you don't want to steal exact questions off the internet, or if that's just not, if Reddit and Quora just aren't your thing, I've talked about Google Trends before in different marketing webinars that I've given, but I want to revisit it just for a second because it got a little bit of a facelift over the past couple weeks here. So I want to revisit it just to re-show you how to use it and remind you that this is a great tool to make social media content in general, not just for questions, but for social media content, I feel like in general. So what is Google Trends? Google Trends is a tool that aggregates all the data of Google searches every single day, every single minute, every single hour over the course of years and years, and presents it in an easily digestible format for someone like us who is not like a data analyst by any stretch of the imagination, but we're interested in what people are Googling and we want to know more. So this is what, when you type in the address that I have there at the bottom in the teal, if you take a look and you go to that website, that is what it looks like on the screen right there. It will ask you to click explore. And then once you click explore, you can type in a search term or a topic that you'd like to talk about. If you just go to the web page homepage itself, it's just going to show you what's most popular on Google right now. And unfortunately for us health insurance agents, it is not health insurance. Both times I've done these webinars, it was Taylor Swift. So unless you're really interested in Taylor Swift and you want to know more about her, that's cool, great, do that. But for our purposes, we're going to hit explore, and then we're going to type in a word that we would think that we want to make content about, right? So using Google Trends would be a way to kind of reverse engineer if you know that you want to talk about Medicare. You would then type Medicare into here and it would generate content for you that is popular surrounding Medicare. Using Quora and Reddit would be the other way around, where you want to just follow what is popular, right? Does that make sense? So this will then show you something similar to what you might remember in previous webinars that I've given. There is a line graph that tells you the frequency of the searches for this term over time. It's helpful if you are solely looking to show up in Google searches when someone types in Medicare. But honestly, good luck with that, because everyone in the world who sells Medicare is going to have the word Medicare on their pages. CMS has the word Medicare on their pages all the time, right? You're going to want to probably be a little more specific than that. Everyone has the word Medicare, but this is where you should be glad you came to this webinar, because not everyone is then going to scroll down a little bit farther on this page after they hit submit. And this is what got the facelift. This is what I think is the most useful for us in our plight to creating social media content. It will divide these two words up into, or the search term up into two categories. There's related topics and related queries. And let me explain what that means in this right now. Okay. So a search term is a term that refers to a specific word or phrase that users are searching for on Google. Once you enter that term into Google Trends, you're looking at that search interest for that word over time for that specific term, right? So if you typed in Medicare, the most related topic is Health Spring Incorporated, which is a company, and that one has, as you can see kind of on the right of that box, has the amount of searches for that has increased 300%. So it is considered a rising, interesting topic. Since we don't want to draw more attention to that company, we're going to leave that alone. We're not interested in that, but it's cool to know, right? But a search topic, on the other hand, this is kind of what we might be interested in, is a broader concept that encompasses multiple related search terms. Google Trends uses machine learning algorithms to group similar search terms together to kind of cluster topics together based on their relevance. So these are things that might not exactly match what you're talking about, but Google understands that they're close. And so they know that if someone is typing in the word Medicare, they're probably also going to be interested in as these other things. And if we look at the search terms, Google's right. It says 2024 Medicare deductible. Again, the word deductible is related to Medicare, but doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. Google's figured out that people care about Medicare deductibles, put them together. That's a related query. Part D plans, Advantage plans. Again, all these words are similar, right? We know that as health insurance agents, your clients might not. And that's why it's so important to write this content with those words in mind, so you can kind of draw those clients to your website and stuff like that, right? So again, these aren't all worded as questions necessarily, but using your expertise, you could probably word some questions surrounding these terms that you've already heard before from your clients, or you could then maybe spark some ideas for not necessarily question-based content, but maybe you want to write an article explaining why the Medicare deductible increase, whatever, right? Or you want to explain why Part D is so valuable to have when you have Part whatever, right? And then my last one, this one is the last one site that I'm going to recommend to you today. This one's low-key my favorite one. It's called Also Asked. Also Asked is similar to Google Trends in that it collects data from search queries and compiles it together, but this only focuses on questions. It will only create questions for you and generate questions for you based upon the keywords that you type in. So you can choose to type in questions or keywords. So if you look at the screen here, I typed in, how do I sign up for Medicare Advantage? Just because I legitimately was just curious what it was going to give me. Be careful, you only get 3 questions per day. So make sure that you are asking being like mindful of what you ask it. But if you type in your question right there, how do I sign up for Medicare Advantage, and then hit search. Oh, this is so cool. It creates a kind of a flow chart of questions that branch off of the most asked questions based on the words or the question that you have input yourself. So if you can look at the example all the way on the left was the question I typed in, how do I sign up for Medicare Advantage? It then looks at questions, follow-up questions that people ask, or questions that are similar to that question that people tend to ask, and puts them in a flow chart for you to easily read, right? So if someone asks, how do I sign up for Medicare Advantage? The next most likely question that someone will ask after typing that question in, they will then ask, why are people leaving Medicare Advantage plans? And then if they are still asking questions after that point, the next questions they will ask are all the way to the right. So maybe, why are Medicare Advantage plans pushed so hard? Is Medicare Advantage a good thing to have? Is it a good idea to switch to Medicare Advantage? These are all similar, but you could write articles that match these questions very easily, right? I think this is so cool because you can mine this for content. I do it all the time. I highly recommend that you then download the results, because you only get 3 searches a day, then you can just keep that in your back pocket. Whenever you have some time, you could go back to this flow chart and write more content for yourself as time goes by, starting on the left and moving your way to the right. So before we hop into the subject matter expert portion of our show, I'm glad that we hit up some relevant questions, and we have like what, 4 places that we can search for questions that we could either answer or create social media content that does answer those questions. Before I keep on keeping on, I'm going to check the chat really quick. All right, looks like we are all set. So again, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat, but let's just keep on keeping on. So now this is the portion of our show where you are going to work at creating a air of subject matter expert to your audience. So let's go back to those forums that we were talking about. I just picked Reddit just because that was the one I'm more familiar with of the 2. So I picked one of those forums and lurked around for a while. I made an account. This part, you got to make an account to be able to make comments, right? You can, when you make the account, you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either make the account as your agency, so it looks like you as an agency are answering the question. So maybe Chelsea Smith's insurance agency, or whatever the name of your insurance agency is, could be the name of your account. Or you could just make an account for yourself personally. Either way is fine, as long as you're doing it, in my opinion, with intention, right? So just keep in mind that if you are making that account to represent your agency, that whole account represents your agency, right? So while, you might be personally interested in like fishing and you go on the fishing subreddit and learn tons about fishing, that's awesome. I wouldn't make a lot of comments as your agency talking about how to fish because that's not what you're trying to get your audience to do, right? You're trying to get your audience to engage with you about health insurance. Now, if you make a personal account and go do that, cool. Now you're cross posting into two different areas, right? Now you might get an audience of those people who enjoy fishing and you happen to mention that you're a health insurance agent, totally different story, right? But make sure if you're doing those things, either way is fine. Just make sure it's with intention, right? So pick a question on the Medicare forum or the ACA forum, whatever forum that whatever subreddit is the word if you're talking about Reddit, whatever subreddit you're interested in, whatever your questions you want to answer, whatever topic you want to be the expert of, head over to that subreddit. Lurk around until you find a question that you want to answer. You can either pick a question that is quick for you to answer, or you can use that question as a way to draw a potential prospect into your agency or to your website. The quick ones establish your account as credible without you spending a ton of time working for something for no tangible benefit. But the latter might, as you imagine, has the potential to bring some business to you. The particular example on my screen could work both ways, in my opinion. Just to summarize what this person's question is, this person is asking which Medicare plan is right for his or her mother who's about to immigrate to the US in a month. You could take the simple route and tell the original poster that his or her mother would have to be a permanent resident for at least 5 years before Medicare is even an option. And then move on. Find another question to answer. This establishes you as a credible person, right? Or you could dive deeper, like some of the posters on the subreddit have already done, if you look at the answer to the question there, and see and ask this person what state they're in and see if you can get them on the ACA plan or see if Medicaid is an option depending on their state, right? If you answer enough questions like this enough times, your account and your agency is going to be seen as an expert of the people who frequent this subreddit, right? And for this to work, you have to have that connection between your agency or yourself personally as you answer those questions. So it's not like you're going to just answer one question and immediately be successful at this. It will take some time, but it doesn't, since we're experts in our field and what we know, we can just crank these out, right? We could just every couple days hop onto it, answer a couple questions, takes us 10 minutes, leave, so on and so forth. But I do want to give you two little warnings here, I guess, or caveats. Keep in mind that in this particular, again, they're called subreddits, forums, and in this case, CMS is going to be a thing of mention. Since this is a Medicare example, they will punish you for coming on too strong and straight up soliciting. So if you hop on this forum and don't answer their question and just start talking about how great your agency is and come over, they're going to just ban you because that's not the point of Reddit, is to advertise yourself. Each page and each website is going to be different. So make sure you read the rules if you're going to link someone to your agency and make sure that that's something that they permit. And you can always suggest that someone private messages you on that Reddit account if you're worried about what you're doing. But you can't just cold ask for prospects or cold out of nowhere tell someone to go visit your agency. And again, be very, very careful when you are soliciting with Medicare. You can't steer or attempt to steer potential enrollees to do something or to retain something or toward a set of plans. You can't talk about like premiums. All the rules of Medicare are still going to apply to you here. So don't go crazy. But if you're answering questions and you're not mentioning those things, you should be in the clear. Just be, if when in doubt, steer away. Just remember that what you say on the internet is there forever, even if you go delete that comment, right? So make sure that you are factual, make sure that you're not breaking any CMS rules, make sure you're not violating the rules of the forum that you're in. But as long as you're not doing any of those things, you're good. So now that you've answered that question, you're demonstrating, and that person has demonstrated the need for you, that this is a question that people have, and a way that you could jump in as an expert and answer that question for them. So what I like to do is I like to rewrite the question to appeal to the broadest audience possible. For this example, I took it in the direction of senior relatives moving to the US, so it would reach the broadest audience possible. But you can tweak yours to hit a specific niche if you so choose. Maybe you know that you live in a community that has a lot of, I live near Sterling Heights, so we have a lot of Middle Eastern people in my community. I could maybe tweak it to say, hey, are you coming over, whatever. Or maybe you know that for sure that a lot of your market immigrates at a younger age, so you're able to get, so that's not a worry for them. Maybe you could say, hey, are you worried about, your retirement, your health insurance when you retire? Don't worry, most of you are going to be okay because you immigrated here at a young age. You'll pay enough taxes in where you will qualify for Medicare once you get there, or whatever it ends up being. If you take a look at my example, I just did exactly what the question asked. I talked about how long you need to be lawfully present in the United States to get Medicare. So if this was all I wanted to do in just a quick little post, I would just hit post. I highly recommend to take a few more minutes and bump this post up to the next level for yourself. I would double check to make sure you have some SEO content words in there to get Google to recognize you for those search engine words, like we talked about for like Google Trends and earlier on. And you'll notice I used hashtags in a couple of those. You can look up which words are popular by typing them in, or hashtags if you're looking to do hashtag stuff, because sometimes search engine words and popular hashtags are two different things. So you can type those into whatever social media platform you're using to see what ones are popular. And then I just hopped on Google and I found a picture of the Statue of Liberty. I added a little stethoscope to it because I thought it was cute. They always do better with pictures, even if a picture is not necessary to explain the answer to the question. Posts always do better with pictures. And then don't forget to add your contact info in that call to action. I personally like to add an easy way to get the ball rolling for someone who wants help right away, aka in my example, this email address, and a way for someone who, like me, would want to research and get my hands dirty first before I talk to someone. Then you could put in your C4 login or your C4 customized link here. They can click on that link. They make themselves a quote. That quote also gets sent to you. You can eventually contact that person, right? You just got yourself a prospect. Rinse and repeat. Okay, get with your inner blogger. So now this portion of our show, we are going to dig deeper into maximizing our digital footprint with hitting those contents, answering those questions within a broader sense. Let me check the chat really quick before we head into our next portion of our show. Okay, looks like we are all set. So I feel like a broken record when I talk about blog posts because I feel like I bring them up in every single marketing webinar that I give, but that's for really good reason. Not only do I personally like them, but they do a ton of work for you. They take a little bit more effort to create than a social media post, but they can be reduced, reused, recycled so many ways. And let me show you in a second. Some of you might find some of this advice a little familiar because I've given similar advice in other marketing webinars, but this is more tailored advice to what we're trying to accomplish here. Before it was more broad. And I have never explained how to use ChatGPT before, so I'm excited. This is the first time I've done this. So believe it or not, as someone who is a content writer, if you go to our website, you see that we have lots of blog posts about certain topics. Sometimes we use ChatGPT to help us write those. Swear to God. We do. But we don't use it in the way that you might think. It's not just go write an article for me. It's more involved than that. If you take a look at the example I have on your screen there, I did type that in. That is, if I were to be writing a blog post and I wanted the blog post to compare MedSup and MedAdvantage, that's just the example I thought of off the top of my head. You have to be very specific about what you ask it to do. So if you'd see it, my example, I told it, you are a health insurance agent selling med supplement and Medicare Advantage plans. Write an approximately 1,000-word blog post comparing and contrasting the pros and cons of each, right? I was very specific. I told it who I am, therefore then what is the purpose of my article to sell health insurance, what I want it to write about, how long I want it to write it, and that I want it to be a comparing and contrasting article, not just plain old information. Because again, we're looking to answer a question for our audience, right? So people aren't going to just type in MedSup. Cool. If they're just going to type in MedSup, then you've already gotten that audience by using the word MedSup in your title or in your blog post, typing it as a question or typing it as you're solving a problem, as in helping them determine if MedAdvantage or MedSup is better for them. You're hitting a broader audience. You're hitting not only the people who use the word MedSup in your search, but you're hitting up the people who then asked the question, is MedSup or MedAdvantage better? Does that make any sense? That little tweak is so important to getting more hits on Google. So you type that in, you hit enter, it's going to spit an article out for you. It's kind of cool to watch. You kind of like feel weird about yourself watching this robot write an article faster than you ever could when it's your job. But if you go and read what it writes, it's not always perfect. Don't just copy and paste it. Please, if you get anything out of what I'm telling you today, besides follow CMS guidelines, read the article. If you're going to use ChatGPT to write an article for you, read the article. If you want to give it more direction after, you can type in again and give it more direction. Maybe you could say, write this in a more informal tone, or write this and add more about med supplement, less about med advantage, whatever. You can tell it to do things and it will tweak it a little bit. Once you like what you see, you can click the copy circle right there, or I'm sorry, the copy button where I circled right there, and then paste it into a word processing thing like Google Docs, Microsoft Word. You know what I'm talking about. I cannot be more clear about this though. ChatGPT is good, but lights always turn off on me. Sorry. I cannot be more clear about this. ChatGPT is good, but it is not perfect. ChatGPT stopped perusing the internet to learn about things in 2021. So if you ask it broad topics like we just did about comparing and contrasting med advantage, great. If you ask it about like broad topics, it's awesome. But if you ask it to write like about this year's new plans or about something that's happened post 2021, it is going to straight up lie to you. It's not going to know that it's lying to you, but it's going to lie to you because it stopped learning in 2021. So do not, by any stretch of the imagination, blindly trust ChatGPT. Fact check things it tells you. Read what you write. You, at the end of the day, are responsible for the content that you put out there, right? So do not just trust ChatGPT blindly. Make sure that you reread the things that it tells you. Cross-check it. But end of little caveat. But if you like what you see, go ahead, copy, paste it, and then tweak it to make it sound more like you, less like a robot. Most of the time, it doesn't sound too robot-y, but I can't explain it exactly, but I sometimes can go through and look and I can see, oh, that people don't talk like that. And I can't really say how or why. You know, just reread it, make it sound like your agency, make it sound like your own. And then, of course, you know what to do after that point. Go post it to your blog. I recommend making the title of your blog a succinct version of the question you are trying to answer. And then make sure you have at least one word or phrase that you want Google to target for search engine purposes. Just like social media posts, slap an engaging picture on there and add in a call to action if appropriate. So at the time of me, we've published one more article since I took that screenshot, but the newest one at the time was our HSA limits article. Put a little chipmunk on there because you're squirreling away money, stuff like that. So what do we do now? Now that we have our wonderful article that we took our time to write, now we cross-post that to all of our social media platforms. So we kind of draw in our audience from social media to come to our website and look at our products. So we just, again, just like we did for the post earlier, we write a little blurb about it at the top, and then we post a direct link to that article to our website, and then we take them to that article, right? So then they can click right on, go to your website. But Chelsea, two's not enough. I need more. That's fine. I got you. More. Recycle it again. Read the highlights of your article into a camera and post it as a TikTok, a short, a video, whatever. We're not going to leave this up on the screen too long because it's not the most flattering picturing of me, but you get the idea. Make a TikTok, read it off. Takes a couple seconds, takes less than a minute to film a TikTok, film a short. YouTube shorts are 60 seconds or less. Throw it up there. Boom, you got yourself some YouTube content. And then the last portion of our show is monitoring your content for success. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this. I don't want to go too much into detail of every single website, every single one. So I'm just going to talk about it kind of broadly. So what are you doing if you're not checking to make sure your posts are successful? Like you want to see what the results are. We already all know about liking, commenting, and sharing on Facebook, I am sure. But every platform has its own way of tracking the progress of your posts, whether that be upvoting on Reddit or on Quora. I think Quora has upvotes as well. There's the analytics portion of YouTube. You'll see that I go on there all the time to see how my videos do, who's watching them, how long they get watched for, where people stop watching, what people, and then of course, absolutely and utterly, the success is then at the end of the day measured by the trickle in of people to your book of business, right? So make sure to ask clients when they do come into your office, where they heard about you, so you can see what content's working and see where you can improve. So if I were to give you 3 actions that I would have you take away from today, in order of least involved to most involved, I would say the least involved thing you could take away from today is measuring how well you're using SEO keywords in the things you put on the internet. If you leave my webinar today and never write a blog post, that's fine. I would then suggest to be conscious of the words and intentional of the words that you use in your social media posts to include things that you would like people to be Googling to get to your website, right? So making sure you're including the word subsidies if you want to help people with subsidies, SNPs if you're helping people with SNPs, whatever it is. The next easiest thing I think would be to get out on socials, look at what questions people are asking, and then answer them on your own social media platforms. And then the most involved thing I would think is writing those blog posts on those topics, right? Going into also asked, going into Google Trends, seeing what is most popular and writing some blog posts about them and getting those things up on your website. And then of course, reposting those onto our website, onto social media to get people to come look at them. Okay. So that's really all I had for you today. Thank you for spending some time with me talking about how to market your agency.